All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Until then, adios.
Conversations from the Dark Side.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Conversations from the Dark Side. It's our casual look at the dark and the unknown. I am your MC for this evening, Amigo Aaron, joined by my co-host and partner in crime, everyone's favorite good old buddy. It's Jack Flack, a.k.a. Rob O'Hara.
What's going on, my man?
And hiding in the rafters, chirping in occasionally, you'll hear your good pal and my brother from another mother. It's our good friend, the Boat.
I come from beyond the grave.
Oh, man.
Oh, my goodness. I can't believe Boat's. Let's give Boat a hand for showing up. Oh, there it is. Oh, no.
Oh, my goodness. Boy, it's starting off early tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So,
We're the carrot top of haunted shows. Here we are.
for this, the third incarnation of Conversation with the Dark Side for 2024, we once again thought we would jump outside the box a little bit, and in this case, jump from the box to the bottle. We're going to be talking about potions and poisons and elixirs and brews and their effect on us culturally, historically. We can look back at a plot device like poison that has been used many times, all the way from Shakespeare on up. And I don't know if you, with today's modern technology, I'm not sure how effective dumping a bunch of arsenic in somebody's oatmeal is. But there was a time where you could get away with just about anything using some sort of horrible thing stuck into somebody's food. Flack, when it comes to potions and poison, like, what pops into your head?
Oh, you know, it's almost an impersonal way of poisoning. Like it's not like you're looking somebody in the eye, and you attack them, you shoot them, you stab them, whatever. Poison is you do something and then you leave it behind. You hope maybe later they'll find it, something like that. So it's a little bit more treacherous, I would say. It's less direct. Now elixirs, of course, are almost opposite, right, of a poison. Like it's something that you would drink, to get something special, which whether it's in fairy tales or stories, and I don't know why I just thought this, but literally in video games, like Gauntlet, where you got the magic potion and thing like that, and poisons could be anything from an intentional thing to I just thought of this whenever you said that, but I had an uncle who my aunt married. He came into the family, and I was real young, and when I met him, I thought he was scary, but he had this real like raspy voice that was hard to understand. And I found out that when he was young, his brother played a trick on him and made a special drink by pouring Coca-Cola and lye and gave it to him. And so he drank lye, and it burned all his vocal cords. So he had this real kind of, raspy kind of voice. So yeah, that's, the other thing I think about poison is, the end of Sopranos, like a guy gets shot or whatever, and then boom, it's lights out, right? Like someone hits you on the head with a hammer, that's it. Like it's just, you don't know what happened, just boom. But with a poison, now you got that moment, you've taken the drink and you're like, the other guy's like, well, now I have time to explain to you my terrible deed, while it's going through. Like unless there's the anecdote, that's always a thing in fiction, got to get the antidote. But unless you got that, you're a goner, and now you got to look at the guy that may have poisoned you, and he's got time to tell you his dastardly plan, So that's just some of the stuff that comes to my mind off the top of my head.
Boat, I'm happy you're in here for this because you're a very well-read fellow. You've delved into the classics. When I talk about people being poisoned, is there anything in your literary background that pops into mind? Any classic uses of potions and poison?
Well, I think we got to go all the way back to the antiquity. Probably the most famous historical poisoning of all time was Socrates. Socrates, as you know, was sentenced to death by drinking hemlock, and so was one of those things where he gathered all of his students around him, and he drank the cup and laid down, and that was the end. But I do want to argue that poisoning has kind of gone away in recent years. I think the art of poisoning is alive and well.
Oh.
Just a couple of years ago, you had Alexei Navalny, the opposition politician in Russia, was actually poisoned by a neurotoxin. Some people think that Putin was behind that. So I think the modern incarnation of the KGB is still out there, doing dastardly deeds. So that was the first modern poisoning that I thought of. But my favorite historical poisoning, which is an odd sentence to say, is the attempted poisoning of Saint Benedict. As you know, the Monkian retreats I go on sometimes are at a Benedictine monastery in Indiana. Saint Benedict was founder of Western monasticism. He started the whole thing up in the 500s, and when he started his first monastery, there were these monks that said, "Hey, we want you to be our leader." And he said, "Okay, cool." And he founded this monastery. Well, it turns out monks didn't like having this guy in charge telling them what to do, and so they put some poison in his wine one evening at dinner. But somehow Saint Benedict knew. Not only did he know the cup was poisoned, but he looked at the glass of wine full of poison, and the wine glass shattered. So he had not only special poison detection powers, but also the power of breaking glass with his mind. So that's my favorite historical poisoning from my buddy Saint Benedict.
That's good stuff, Bo. It's funny. We did a little research this week. Flack dug into some of the more famous historical poisonings over the centuries. It's a good way to kick things off by just looking backwards to see how poison was used and who it was used on. Flack.
Yeah, so we made a list of the top 5 or just 5 random poisonings from history, and Boat just covered 2 of them.
Yeah, good job, Boat.
I studied up. I read ahead.
So one was Socrates. I don't know if you heard this, but he got poisoned.
I feel bad for him too, because the way he went down was, he was pretty much, they were grouped up on him, and they were like, "You got to take this." And so,
yeah.
But at least he went down with a lot of dignity. Like and he had some choice words before he took the poison. So if you're gonna go, it could be worse, I guess.
I think his words were, "Screw you guys, I'm going home."
It was the philosophical version of that.
The 80s movies are so filled with quotable lines, and one of my favorite 80s movies was Real Genius. And,
oh, yes.
Of course, when he's talking, he's discussing, it's just a throwaway line, but he's sitting there and he says, "I was just reflecting on Socrates' last words, which were, I drank what?"
Scoob in the chat brings up a famous fictional poisoning. He's referencing Hamlet. There's something rotten in the state of Denmark. Aaron, do you know what Hamlet's dad's name was?
Hamlet's dad's name? I probably should know this. I'm guessing it was something like Big Earl, if I'm not mistaken.
It was also Hamlet.
Oh, there you go.
So whenever you read any commentaries on the plays, they always reference old Hamlet and young Hamlet.
They can't use Junior.
No, that was.
How about
Shakespeare
He-Ho
didn't
de la
just do
Hamlet? We'll do it like the luchadors do.
Or you could, early on.
Yeah.
early in the play, it's easy because you could call one of them Dead Hamlet, but
Yeah.
then by the end, they're also both Dead Hamlet.
No,
Also,
no, he's dead
so-
at the beginning. Hamlet's dad is dead at the beginning. He appears in a ghost as a ghost.
Yes,
in
but at
very
the
first
end, they're
scene.
both Dead Hamlet.
Oh yeah, they're both dead Hamlet. I
Right,
see
so-
what you mean. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It works for only so long.
Right. But another one that was on our list, one that I did not know was Cleopatra. Cleopatra from Egypt. It was rumored that, of course, we know the love story of Cleopatra, and there's a lot of, as far as the myth or the story goes, was that she took her own life by getting bitten by an asp. But there are some historians that believe that she may have actually ingested a mixture of poisons, quote, for a less painful death. So that's
The asp is better.
I would think the asp
Yeah.
would be.
I will say, Cleopatra, of course, and Mark Antony ran roughshod before she finally was surrounded and killed herself. And her exploits before Rome was even involved were pretty impressive because she was always matching wits with her family over control. So her story is quite interesting, and she knew that if she was captured, she would be paraded right through the streets of Rome. And that's no way to go when you're a world leader. You got to take care of your own business. So I can understand why she did it.
Asp or poison, either one would have been better ending for her than if she'd been captured.
Yeah.
Another famous leader that is rumored to possibly have been poisoned is Napoleon Bonaparte. Now, his official cause of death is listed as stomach cancer. However, historians that have looked at his body found high levels of arsenic in his hair follicles. So that could possibly mean that either he was poisoned or maybe he poisoned himself. Which is another thing, people, may see poisoning as an alternative, to a different, in both of these cases, Cleopatra and Napoleon, as an alternative to a different type of death that they've chosen their.
I think isn't that the James Bond thing or the spy movie thing? How you have the cyanide pill in the ring.
Mm-hmm. Right, you always have your out, so if you ever get captured or something like that, you pop that in and then
That's
and
the
there
exact
you go.
noise it makes right there.
that's your last that's the last thing you ever hear. And the last one on here is Alan Turing, which a lot of computer people would probably know for the Turing test, which is the test to see if you could tell the difference between a machine or a human being based on their responses, which was kind of appropriated for Blade Runner. But there's lots of mentions of the Turing test, of course, in science fiction and in actual nonfiction. But he apparently died by suicide, and they said that he ate an apple that he had personally injected with cyanide. And then it says this was an after, like a sub thing on the article. It said some people speculate that the poisoning may have been accidental. And so really, if there's one thing to take away from tonight's show, don't inject apples with cyanide and leave them laying around where you might also accidentally eat that apple.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be
Information for life right there.
Good advice.
yeah.
Just we were talking before the show, and I thought of a couple other guys you could sort of. I mean, of course, there were. If you look at any history book, you'll find countless examples of people being poisoned, sometimes by themselves, sometimes by others. We talked about Hannibal, whose death is sort of unknown, but they think he poisoned himself. Another guy was there were plenty of Nazis that did it, including the Desert Fox Rommel. I believe he poisoned himself on a train. So there are plenty. It's a would it be quicker and less painful to poison yourself or shoot yourself? One would wonder about that. What do you think, Boat?
Well, I think that people that poison. Well, first of all, a lot of these historical poisonings, guns were not on the table.
That's
yet.
true. That's true.
But in contemporary times, I think that you look at topics like euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide. These are poisonings. This is what this is.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Since we were talking about like historical poisonings, I wanted to break out a little something I did a little research on, and that this story always I thought was interesting. It's about the lady that was dubbed the Black Widow by the London press at the time, a lady named Mary Ann Cotton, who was romping and stomping in the 1850s. Her tale is, we talked last week about how rough it was to be living in London in the 1800s. And Mary Ann Cotton was born in 1830. Her life, just before she even did anything wrong, was just the worst. And I almost feel for her in a certain way. Her father was a miner, and they lived in a mining town. And her father, when she was very young, fell into a mine shaft and died. And so you would think to yourself, holy smokes, that's horrible. Well, the mine company didn't feel that way because they said her father's body was delivered to her mother at the house in a sack, and the sack had stamped on it, property of the South Hetton Coal Company. That was the amount of love that was showed.
That's old school evil mining company.
Oh,
right
it's not over, because we know a little something about
your
evil.
soul to the company store.
Well,
That's right.
So what happens when your husband, the miner, gets killed in the mine? Do you get some extra money? Do you get some sort of extra love from the mining company? No, you get kicked out of your house. That's what happens, because he's no longer working for the mine company, you see. And so they knocked around for a while and were actually on the street for a little while until her mom married another miner and moved back into a company mine house. So you can understand how horrible this would have been. Because I don't know how the relationship was with the first dad, but at this point, it's an absolute marriage of convenience when this happens. And so, by the age of 16, Mary Ann had left the mining town and had moved and was looking for some action when she came across what we'll call husband number one in this tale, which is a fellow named William Mowbray. Okay, so she moved to southwest England, and this fellow had several children when she got into the marriage. She was 20, by the way. And unfortunately, these kids had a problem. They started dying. It was either 4 or 5 kids. Some of the total amount's lost to history. But eventually, all these children died from mysterious circumstances. One was diagnosed with gastric fever, and then in 1865, about 12 years after they'd gotten married, William, the husband, died of a intestinal disorder. And so, thank God that they had a substantial, I wouldn't call it substantial, but I would say they did have insurance on his life to the tune of 35 pounds. And so, thankfully, she got some money, and then it was time for her to move on to husband number 2. So, husband number 2 was George Ward. And George Ward had a 3.5-year-old daughter die of typhus fever. So she only had one child left at this point. And of course, you know what happened there. So in August of 65, not very long afterwards, George Ward suffered and died from a long illness. Guess what? Paralysis of the intestine. All right, so I'm going to skip ahead here, but this kept happening to this lady. She had husbands 3, 4, and then several lovers in the mix. And so what was happening here? Was this lady incredibly unlucky? No, absolutely not. Well, she was, I guess, in a way. But she ended up having 3 husbands die and 12 kids die amongst her victims, plus some unnamed lovers who also left her some money too. Husband number 3, before this guy actually didn't die. James Robertson, he figured out what she was up to because he suspected that she was putting something in his food. So him and his 2 kids actually survived. They're the only ones. Long story short, on husband number 5, when the last one died, the insurance companies were like, "Wait a minute, you've had all these people die." So they finally got wise to her. They figured it out. They put her on trial, and of course she was poisoning these people. And the thing is, it was a variety of stuff that she was using, but it was everything from arsenic to like some kind of paint dust. I mean, it was a bunch of weird stuff that she'd put in this food, and ultimately kill these people. And so eventually, Mary Ann was caught. She was put on trial. The trial took 90 minutes. It was national news. And she was sentenced to death by hanging, which, as you want to do. She drew a good crowd to the hanging. And when they strung her up, she did not die from hanging like you would want. She was strangled to death. And there is speculation. I looked at a couple places, and I saw this mentioned over and over. People think that the rope was rigged to choke her out. But during the trial, she became known as the Black Widow. She's one of the most prolific and well-known poisoners of the era. Can you think of anyone else who has been this prolific of a poisoner, maybe even in modern times? Does it ring a bell, people getting poisoned over and over like this?
Well, usually, I mean, this lady was pretty smart. I mean, first of all, she had to come up with like all of these different ways to poison her husbands, because I guess if it was arsenic all the way through, somebody would have caught on. Since it was arsenic 1, paint chips another. So I think that serial poisonous probably don't happen as often as, say, serial killers of other ways. Because, if you're a serial killer, you probably just get the thrill out of killing rather than like coming up with new and inventive ways to poison. I don't know. It's hard to get in the mind of somebody that kills multiple people.
Yeah, I only know of one other story that's remotely similar to this, and it was the angel makers. If you're familiar with that, it was from World War I. It was a lady named Auntie Susie, who was a midwife, and basically was these women would become pregnant, and then their husbands would go off to war, or they would come back and they're like, I got this baby, and we don't really want it. And she would be like, oh, no problem, and she would take it to the other room and then be like, oh, it died. I forgot, I didn't know how to tell you that. But then it was like, it happened like a couple hundred times. Like it happened a lot. And then, I mean, it happened to the point where like people would schedule Auntie Susie to come. But yeah, I don't know. When you were telling the story, my grandma had, when I used to go to my grandma's house, she had one of these, maybe you guys have seen this. It's probably something that you could buy from Avon or something, but it was like a brass tree that you would hang on the wall, and it had spots for little photographs, and so she had like all of our school pictures in there and stuff. But if you started dating a woman, like if you date a woman and she's got one of those and everybody in that thing has mysteriously died, you got to walk. You got to, like, don't be like, if she's like if there's a lot of fresh holes in the backyard and you're like, I don't know, it's a mystery. It's where all my 12 children died. You got to, I mean, there's no woman that's worth that. You gotta walk away from that.
If you think about it, I mean, this seems obvious, but I mean, you're talking about a time where communication was practically zero. And so it's funny what you could get away with. I can't tell you how many stories when I'm looking back through historical stories and myths and are people just like having like a zillions of wives, like the bigamy, like that, because what are they gonna do? I mean, when they caught you, they were mad. Crap happened, but I mean, it was so easy to. And if worst case scenario, you could just leave the country. I mean, it was a different world. And so these serial poisonous or serial killers, just like the resurrections we talked about last week, they could get away with this stuff because you're talking a very small circle of people that are going to be on the know. But it's sort of chilling too. There's a certain comfort in mass communication. I mean, sometimes it's a pain, but also for sure that if in 2024, if someone's poisoned 4 or 5 husbands, you're probably going to hear about it on the local news.
Well, if you think about like a criminal today, like if you're trying to flee from the long arm of the law, right?
Yeah.
Like what we think of today is I'm going to have to get on a flight and go to a third world country that does not extradite to the United States, right? Yeah. Like you're like, I'm going to have to go to Colombia. I'm going to have to go, like, whatever you're going to do, you're probably going to have to learn Spanish. You're going to have to go somewhere in South America and just to disappear, right? But back then, I mean, maybe you get on a buggy and you go 20 minutes east.
Yeah.
You go to the next place over, and then you just tell people, you just start going by your middle name. Like it was a lot easier,
Actually, historically, that's not really true. Like in the Middle Ages, if you were banished from your village, and like this was like when you hear about people being exiled, and you're like, well, that doesn't sound so bad. Like people, when you show up in a new village in the Middle Ages and in the early modern era, people suspected the worst about you immediately because why else would you just be showing up out of nowhere in a new place?
Oh,
good boat, very good.
Which was how the fake mustache was invented.
I want to mention a couple very excellent mentionings of famous poisonings from the folks in the chat here. Petzel mentioned Rasputin. I believe poison was amongst the many things that were done to that poor freak.
He was also stabbed,
shot, drowned,
thrown off a bridge. Yeah.
Happy Coding mentions Grigory Markov, who was killed by a KGB agent who injected him with poison using the tip of an umbrella.
Oh yeah,
Buck
That's
Owens.
classy. I like that.
Buck Owens mentions Mazzini, who was in Princess Bride, who of course was poisoned because Wesley had been using the poison for years and had grown accustomed to it. So those were good ones. There were a couple more here. Let me scroll down a little bit. Jim Jones was that boy. That's an obvious one. That was from Steve Birch. Very good. I mean, not good. We don't like him, but that's an excellent one because that was unbelievably brutal. So, yeah, unfortunately, poisoners have been around and they'll probably continue to be around. Hopefully, no one will drop arsenic into your soup. Let's hope. We're going to.
I really was hoping that the guy with the umbrella released it penguin style. Like
that's how they caught him. He was waddling off. We're going to take a quick break, everybody. We'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds, and we're going to move to the lighter side of potions. Move to the lighter side of potions. We'll be back. Stay tuned. This is Conversations from the Dark Side.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Dark Side.
Hey, guys,
You are experiencing Conversations from the Darkside.
Hey, we're back with more Conversations from the Dark Side. Again, I'm Amigo Aaron, joined by Jack Flack, and hanging from the rafters, the mysterious John Boatofcar Shawler. Tonight, we are talking potions and poisons and brews and elixirs, all sorts of wacky, frothy items that come in a cup, in a powder, in various ways. But we've just covered all the various poisonings and horrible, horrible tales. But we thought it'd be fun to delve into the lighter side, the more positive side of potions. I mean, sort of. Tell them about it, Flack.
Well, we did a little deep dive into some, potions and elixirs and stuff. But before, I kind of went off on a side tangent because in that list of stuff, I saw absinthe. And I know a little bit about absinthe, but I didn't know a lot. So I did just a little bit of it. And I should say that I've been doing some work, and I'm working on getting an absinthe maker to sponsor Boatfest next year. So
God,
we could
well, it's the last one we're having.
Good to bring it in. Absinthe was actually created as kind of like a cure-all elixir, like one of those like a heal, like a one potion for all your ailments, like the traveling guys. It was created in Switzerland in the late 1700s by a French doctor. This sounds like a name that's made up. Pierre Ordinaire, which is, if I were going to make up a French guy, like for a book report, that would be his name. It would be Pierre Ordinaire. What did he look like? Nothing special. So it was, it was not a potion, an elixir, a drink that would cure anything. You got this pain, we'll give you some absinthe. We'll get this, because it has drugs in it. It has medicine in it. It had hallucinogenic, is that the right way to say that? Effects, it had different things. And then in the 19th century, in the 1800s, it kind of gained traction just for recreational use. People were just drinking it because they would have hallucinations, supposedly, but some of the effects were almost like overstated. People maybe exaggerated a little bit, but the 1800s were definitely the highlight period for absinthe. And then there was an event in 1905 referred to as the Absinthe Murders. Oh, I mean, this is
that's not a good PR move, I don't think.
Right, like if you want to, the old saying, like, one guy ruined it for everybody. This is the guy, Jean Lamprey. He was from Switzerland, and so as the story went, old Jean, he was a laborer. And on the way home from work, he basically just went on a bender. He went to the bar. He was drinking everything they would serve him at the bar. This guy was more than 3 shades to the wind, 4 or 5 shades to the wind. It was a pretty bad, according, to people that were there. He was pretty drunk. He also drank 2 ounces of absinthe. Okay, so old drunk Gene goes home to his wife and immediately gets in a fight with his wife, and she's like, Gene, you're so drunk, you're being a jerk, whatever she says, right? And he says, you know what, here's what you need to do. You need to polish my shoes. You need to shine my shoes. And she says, I'm not doing that. And he says, okay, I'll be right back. And he goes back and he comes in with a gun and shoots her in the head. Kills her immediately.
Jeez.
And then his 2 children, ages 2 and 4, come in and they go, Daddy, what have you done? And he shoots both of his kids. Kills them.
Man, I'm glad we shifted over to the lighter side on this.
I know, wait till the dark part of this.
Sorry, Boat.
Yeah. Then Gene says, what have I done? And he shoots himself in the face, but he doesn't kill himself. He just shoots himself in the jaw. And then he's like, oh my gosh. And he picks up his wife, and then the police come, and they're like, Gene, why are you shooting your family? Why'd you shoot everybody? And he goes, I think it was the absinthe. I think it was the 2 ounces of absinthe I had. And so anyway, he went to, they arrested him. They put him on trial. And this is when you know you're in trouble. This is a line from a news article. It said the trial started on February 23rd, 1906 and ended the same day.
Yeah. That seems to happen a lot when it's open and shut. Yeah.
Bad news, right. But his defense was that the absinthe had drove him mad, that it wasn't all the other stuff. It wasn't the problems he'd had with his wife or any of this other stuff. It was the absinthe, right? Like, you know, they didn't have Dungeons and Dragons or Ozzy Osbourne to blame it on back then. So you had to go with the absinthe, right? And so anyway, they go, no, that's ridiculous. And so he was sentenced. I don't know how long the sentence was, but it doesn't matter because he ended up taking his own life like 3 days later in his cell. But here was the thing. That trial sparked all of the people, and it started in Switzerland, and they were like, this absinthe will make you go crazy. This is bad stuff. And so these people made a petition, and it ended up going to a vote, and Switzerland banned absinthe because of this court case. Okay, because of Gene. Gene ruined it, right? But then, so people didn't know the details, like what we talked about, like you know, the details of the trial. They just knew, oh, this guy drank absinthe, that he killed his family because it made him go nutty, and so that spread to other countries, and so it within over a period of 10 years, by 1915, several countries, including the United States, had banned absinthe, and this is why. It's because of this court case.
This one guy.
This one guy, the absinthe murders, is what this is referred to as. So, now there is the active drug that's in there. It's comes from wormwood oil, and it is called, I think it's thujonium. I don't know. I'm not pronouncing that right, but basically, for a long time, you could make absinthe, but you just couldn't have that ingredient in there. So that's how a lot of people said, like, oh, I saw this guy selling absinthe or whatever. Well, you could sell it as long as that part, that didn't have that ingredient, or it was so low, it was like 5 parts to every million, something like that. But there are lots of countries where it is legal. I believe it is legal in Canada.
So it's still illegal here, Switzerland, all it's still, that one case has been illegal all these years?
Well, they've kind of changed it up. They've kind of changed the laws a little bit. In 2007, they relaxed some of the rules, and in 2007 is when, so we have my friends come over. We have a bad movie night. We watch movies, and one of my buddies came over with a bottle of absinthe, and I said, I didn't think you could sell absinthe. He said, no, well, they've kind of changed it or whatever. And he brought absinthe Manson, which is Marilyn Manson's brand. So Marilyn Manson has his own brand of absinthe.
That's the darkest thing I've heard this evening.
Yeah.
There you go. So maybe that's what we'll have at Boat Fest.
How was it?
Better than the
I've never had absinthe before.
You know what? All I could tell you is I killed everybody that was at the party.
That explains it. Yeah.
It was strong stuff. No,
yeah.
It was it's okay.
Have you had it, Boat?
Yeah, I think I've had some absinthe before, but I've never done it properly. You know how you're supposed to drizzle it over the sugar cube and all that stuff, and I think there's a flame involved.
You have to be holding a butcher knife, I believe.
I think there's some incantations. You know, I was looking around here. I guess absinthe has been legal since the mid 2000s in the United States. You can put as much wormwood in there, and it's interesting. The wormwood itself, which a lot of people think is like the secret drug ingredient, is there's tons of other liquors that have wormwood in it that nobody bats an eye at. Vermouth, the sort of the mixer that you make a martini with. Its name literally means wormwood in Frenchified German. So, vermouth never been illegal as far as I know.
It's got better press guy.
Yeah, there were no vermouth murders though. So that was the thing.
We were going to move this a little bit later on, but this seems like a natural progression of this conversation. So we might as well jump into it now, because we talked about poisons and potions and elixirs and brews, and I felt like I'd be not fulfilling the brew into this if I didn't look into some bizarre drinks, and specifically beers, because we've got a lot of there's a cottage industry that y'all may have heard of it. It's where a bunch of suckers make their own beer, all right?
That'll never work.
And so I got this food and wine has a list, and I was looking this over, and I thought to myself, we got to talk about this, because I'm hoping that you guys have had some of these beers on here. So I'm gonna mention a few of these beers. I want you to let me know if you've ever drank one. All right. The first one is called the Odious Ale, okay? So get this. They went to Raw. Remember Roald Dahl of Tales of the Unexpected fame of
Willy Wonka?
Willy Wonka, Chickadee Bang
Perhaps
Bang.
slightly more known for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Well, I'm just saying, he did a lot of stuff, a lot of short stories. So if you ever watch Tales of the Unexpected, you always see Roald Dahl sitting in this chair. It's his writing chair. It's in front of his desk, and they filmed this crap at his house, right? Because that's Roald Dahl. He would introduce the various shows that would be on that week for his show, on his TV show. So the people at 40-Foot Brewery somehow got hold of this chair, and they took swabs of it. And what they did was they basically made the yeast from what was left in the chair, presumably from Dahl. So if you ever wanted to taste the true essence of Roald Dahl, you can go buy some Odious Ale. Which, anyway, have you guys ever heard of anyone making beer or ale by using swabbing up the skin particles or essences of people?
Now, I want you to think about the question you just asked. And think about the likelihood that we're going to respond to the affirmative.
I listen to that Pixel Gaiden, and every week they're drinking all these weird beers, and you drink a bunch of weird booze, soil-based and whatever. You never know. And that leads me to my next one. Remember, you used to drink this thing called fish head or dog head or something?
Yeah, dogfish head.
Well, so here it is. It's on this list. The people that make dog fish head make a brew called the Celeste Jewel Ale. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I have not.
So get this. This is a limited release beer, and they took meteorites, crushed them up, steeped them in a beer-like tea, and they made this brew. So it's made out of meteors. And then they served the beer in koozies made from the fabric of astronaut suits.
Okay. I see. Listen, if you're going to give me, Roald Dahl's sweaty flesh or, astronaut suit koozie, I know which one I'm picking.
Now, here's one that may be both your cups of tea. And I'll leave it to the chat, too, to give us the thumbs up or down. Oyster Stout. Everybody likes oysters, right? Well, who doesn't want the raw oysters, shucked directly into the conditioning tank to make this Irish oyster stout? Who would take this on? Anybody?
I had a Bloody Mary one time with 3 oysters in the Bloody Mary. It was like a shot thing.
Yeah.
To do. And the two things I don't like are raw oysters and tomato juice.
Well,
so my favorite, I would have more enjoyed eating the glass.
that is rank.
It was terrible.
Here's a great one. Boat, I know you like to play the markets.
Yeah, dude.
This one may be for you. It's Big Ass Money Stout. All right.
Hey, I like all that.
So it's also my rap name. So
I love it. So
yo, I'm Big Ass Bloody Stout in the house.
This is our Norwegian brew. that what they do is inside the brew, it's made with frozen Hawaiian pizza and real Norwegian banknotes shredded into
That is crazy.
There
Again,
you go.
Better than Essence of Ronald Dahl.
Yeah.
So far, is that the one you would not drink? That's the least popular so
Well,
far.
'cause here's the thing. Go ahead,
Sign
Bo.
me up for the one that's not cannibalism.
Well, here's the thing. You said they swabbed what's on the seat,
Yeah.
right, on his chair.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I mean, that's not what all's on my seat. I'm just,
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Listen, man, why don't
Yeah.
they just call it what it is? Old Doll's butt juice.
Wow.
right.
Oh,
Yeah,
Jesus,
right.
Bode. Listen, maybe this would be more your liking, Flack. Flack, you're what I would call a daring fellow. Why not go for a little snake venom by Brewmeister? Guess what's in snake venom brew? It's the strongest beer on earth at 67.5% alcohol.
Wow. Wow. Really?
Yes.
Is that possible? Wow.
Yes.
That's like straight up rubbing alcohol.
I mean,
on the flip
that-
side, it contains no actual snake venom, so you got
Hold
that
on.
going for you.
I'll
That's
add
not-
to Amazon. Okay.
So
I'm making my Amazon. I took off Ronald Dahl's
here's
sweat
my
juice and added.
here's
snake
my
venom
big
to it.
question: if this is ahead or behind the raw Dahl drink, that tells you where you were going here. So attendees of Denmark's Roskilde Music Festival may be surprised to hear that their pee was used to make beer. More than 50,000 gallons of urine from the festival were used and collected to fertilize malted barley that was harvested and turned into this Pilsner, the world's first beer ever made with human pee. They call it
And
beer
wow,
cycling.
I guarantee you that's not true. I guarantee you there's been human pee beer
Well, that may be
before.
the case, but
That's false
it's
advertising.
they are dubbing it beer cycling. What do you think about pee beer?
You know, first of all, I've had Keystone Light, so I feel like I've already had pea beer. I when I was young, my grandma was half Russian and half Polish. And when I was very young, she took me to the meat market. We were in Chicago. She took me to the meat market, and she went to the butcher and ordered a cow tongue, and it came wrapped in this big thing. And the first thing I said is, "Oh, Jesus, did all the McDonald's close?" And she goes, "What?" And she goes, "No." And I went, I said, "I thought something must have happened if we're eating cow's tongues. Like, I thought maybe we've run out of Big Macs." And that this would, like, why would you eat this before we've run out of Big Macs? And so that's my initial reaction to that story. Like, I've drank a lot of bad beer, but I don't think any of it contained urine. And I just feel like we haven't run out of beer, of non-urine beer.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, you know, this is not this is sort of false advertising on multiple levels, because there's no pee in the beer. The pee is used for fertilizer, which if you go to peecycling.com, you'll see that thousands of people are doing this all the time, all over the world.
Do you think that misrepresentation is bad or good for the beer? You know,
Well, I don't know. I mean, how many more bottles are you going to sell knowing it's made, you know, at least in part from human pee? That's a question for the ages.
well, you know, along those same lines, let's talk about Full Circle Pale Ale. This one's out of
Oh,
San
this sounds
Diego. And
Sounds
so, hey, if you ever saw Idiocracy, the one thing you didn't want to do was drink water from the toilet. Well, in this one, you're using toilet water. They used recycled wastewater to make the ale. They say it's 100% safe and delicious.
I think that was actually invented in Alcatraz a long time ago.
That may be the case. So this is another one that's sort of like the raw Dahl one. This is beard beer. So a beard beer was so there was a beer called Oregon's Rogue Ales Beard Beer that was made with yeast that was grown in the now retired head brewer's beard.
Oh.
And
Again,
it has
are
a
we out of Big Macs?
pineapple-y flavor, apparently. Pineapple-y flavor in the beer. What do you think would brewing a beer made out of beard yeast? Why would it taste pineapple-y? One would
Because
wonder.
obviously he had Hawaiian pizza that day. It tastes like whatever he had for lunch, I think.
Yeah, I mean, does the flavoring come from whatever food is stuck in the beard?
Exactly.
I don't know. Rounding out, we got a couple more on the list here. The Ghost-Faced Killer beer. So, what you'd put in this beer? What does every beer need? Right, a little kick. You can't get a better kick than ultra hot peppers in the beer. Ghost peppers, in fact.
Okay.
Are in
I
the
could
beer.
see that. I could
Yeah,
see that.
I
They're
mean, I
spicy
would at
drinks.
least, I might try a can of that if I saw that at the Fruth in Taze Valley.
I will say, Food and Wine does suggest that if you're gonna double fist this, make sure you have a glass of milk standing by. Which I can't imagine drinking a hot beer.
Well, I can tell you this: you're not going to want to drink beer and milk back to back. That's not a good idea.
Speaking of something you don't want to drink, so this is called Havlor. This is a Icelandic beer. You know, just when you think you've heard it all, why not make beer with sheep dung smoked whale testicles? Sheep dung. This brew uses 3 testicles per tank, and so there you go. It's
They're on a strict 3 testicle limit.
That's right. It's
Right.
meant to be
Those
enjoyed.
4 would be gross.
Right.
It's meant to be enjoyed with the local delicacy, cured sheep's head and rotten shark. So there you go.
All of these beers sound like things you would have if you lost a bet. Like none of them sound like I would like like a speed round dating. Like if you lined all these up and you're like, you got 3 seconds to tell me about each one. You're like testicles, urine, guy's beard, something hot, ghost hot pepper. I'd be like, and Ronald Dahl's bodily fluids. I go, I guess ghost pepper. Like that seems to be because people do eat those. You know what I mean?
I will say they've saved the last 3 are probably the most interesting.
Oh,
to me.
is it getting worse?
Well, it depends on your perspective. This is called Jurassic Saison by Fossil Fuels. And they asked the Food and Wine asked the question, what happens when a microbiologist finds yeast DNA in a 45 million year old piece of prehistoric fossilized amber? They make beer out of it. That's what. Jurassic beer. What do you think about that? You try that, wouldn't you?
I mean, I know that I don't know that much about the Boat knows more about it. I think about the beer making process, but I know people always want like the things to be aged.
Yeah.
So
I mean, to me, that's if you put aged on anything, you're going to sell more of it.
right.
Now, you're in a restaurant. Let's say you go out to Applebee's or one of these big restaurants, and so they give you that complimentary bread. People eat a bunch of that bread, right? But a lot of times people don't eat the crust or they leave something behind. A lot of people throw that out. That's for suckers. Because what you should do is what the people at Toast Pale Ale do. They collect bread scraps and then make beer out of them. So anything that's thrown out in London, any bread, they can grab, they toast, they break it down, it goes in the tank and gets a second life as a beer. What do you think about drinking someone's leftover bread?
Listen,
Well, beer is liquid bread. That's what it is. It's
Right.
good for you.
So you're okay with it then, Bode?
Yeah, absolutely.
Rounding out the list here, number 13. This is the Un Kuno Kuro brew from Japan. This is also known as elephant coffee poo beer. It's made by fermenting coffee beans that have passed through the digestive system of Thai elephants. What do you think about that?
I'll have to ask Eep about that one. We'll see if she's heard about that.
You're right. I forgot we had an inside track. That's a good one, Steve. Let me ask you, Bo. When you were in Thailand, what was the elephant population like over there?
Larger than the United States, I would say. You see them walking down the streets of Bangkok. They're around.
Is passing stuff through them and then digesting it, is that a thing?
That's more of a weird Japanese kink.
I'll buy it. I'm buying what you're saying. I believe it. I think you nailed it. That's good. Well, that was our booze portion of the evening, ladies and gentlemen. We will take a quick step away, And when we come back, I swear we'll do the lighter side. We won't fool you this time. There won't be a bunch of absinthe murders or drinking someone's leftover butt juice. We promise. This is the kind of conversation you can only get on the dark side.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Dark Side.
Just a gravel stop on a mountain road. From all the tales I've been told, there's a monstrosity soaked in sap atop a genuine 50s tourist trap. Step right up, that'll be $6. And when the tour bell rings, you gotta trust your luck. No hypertension or vertigo if you wanna dive in that mystery hole.
Here in West Virginia, we've tested all of our activities for maximum family fun. Everything has been tested and retested to make sure your West Virginia vacation will be the best your family has ever had. So call today for more information and test out West Virginia for yourself.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Dark Side.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Conversations from the Dark Side. It's me, your good buddy, Amigo Aaron, joined by the ever-popular, ever-present Rob Flack O'Hara. Boat has taken leave from the show after adding his 2 cents in. I enjoyed having him on here. So me and Flack will guide this sucker into port. And we promise you the lighter side of poison and deadly potions is coming up. And Flack will lead us through the haze into the happy world of love potions.
Well, when you want to murder somebody.
No. No.
We've had so much dark. No, I was trying to, when we were talking about, when you were coming up with this idea, like all these different kinds of, magical drinks, right? Like whether it's potion, like it's always, I think part of what's interesting about it to me is that, like, if you don't drink water, you will die, right? Like we have to have water to live, and so drinking potions, drinking poison, it's all these things that it makes it seem just a little bit more dangerous, you know what I mean? So anyway, when I was trying to brainstorm some ideas, I was looking up, like love potions that came up. Like I was thinking, like love potion number 9, like that song. Everybody knows that song, and so that kind of got me down the road of love potions, aphrodisiacs, which I'm sure I knew this at some point. I'd forgotten, but aphrodisiac is for the Greek word pertaining to Aphrodite, right? Like we all know the Greek goddess, goddess of love, right? But I did not know that aphrodisiacs, there are records of them in Chinese literature that date all the way back to 2700 BC. Like this is not a modern thing,
That doesn't surprise me, if I'm honest.
No.
Just because of the nature of man. It's like,
yeah,
I need some action here. And even if I'm a 2700 BC Chinese man, things haven't changed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We got that in common.
Right. Well, it's not like that it was only in China. Like there's all these different references of different cultures, that date back. And there's really 2 types of aphrodisiacs, I would say, that when you go back and look that far in history. And one is like for men who could not perform, right? and was important because literally, like, you have to be able to reproduce to keep society going, right? Like that's so that has been a problem, all the way back as far as like recorded history, right? But then the other one, when I think of like love potion number 9 or stuff, it's not really that. It's like, how do you attract that person? How do you make that person who's not attracted to you? How do you make them attract to you? Like, is there some magical thing that you can give them? Slip something into their drink, and of course,
here it comes.
Over time, we've had things like Spanish fly, right, or things like you would give them, but part of it is, I think you could take 2 different angles of this. One would be stuff that would be like medicinal or like an actual chemical thing, right? Like, oh, I gave this, like you gave this girl a drug and it affected her judgment or whatever. But then the other kind is, a magical thing, right? Like love potion number 9 or things like that. Like, I got the eye of Newt and the heart of something, and I mixed it together and somehow sprayed it on her or gave her this drink or did something and made her interested in that. Do you have any memories of anything like that, like in culture or movies or stories or anything like that? Or
I mean, that's a favorite of all films, is the old love potion or the gimmick that you spray on someone. Let's call what that is what it is. That's mind control is what that is. If a girl don't like you, but you want her to, and you spray her with something, you're mind controlling her. Love potion sounds so much nicer than what it really is. Forcing people against their will. You mentioned Spanish fly because that is sort of that's the catch-all for the term. I was stunned when I was looking over this research to find out that there was a Spanish fly in real life, and it had been around and been used in aphrodisiacs since ancient Greece. Now that's impossible for me to believe that it's been handed down. It's a type of blister beetle, the emerald green insect, which you crush and mix with herbs, and that's how. So I don't know if I doubt that's how they make it now. But have you ever seen a bottle of Spanish fly like floating around?
No.
I mean, because you can actually order something called that. If you want, but God knows what's in it.
Right.
But when it comes to, listen, how many plot devices have been used this sort of thing over the years in films, and you could, if you're, in a serious note, if you're a person who's fallen madly in love with someone who does not reciprocate that love, you can see in a real world situation where sad people would be driven even today to hope that this would be a real thing, and it's sad for them unless they're just lecherous scumbags, but because if such a thing exists on this earth, I've not heard about it. The one that would work anyway.
Okay, so I was going to mention one time when I tried something like this, but you keep describing them as a sad person.
Wait a minute. You tried this, Flack? I got to hear this.
Well, not exactly like a potion kind of thing, but I remember I got a book at this garage sale one time, like when I was a little kid, and it was like The Spells of Zoroaster or something like that. It's like some goofy thing. I remember it was like I'd had all this stuff. It was like if you it talked about pyramid power, and it said this is an experiment you could do if you built a pyramid like out of balsa wood, and you put a piece of fruit under it, and then you put another piece of fruit right next to it on the bar. The one in the pyramid would not rot as fast as the other one. And I was like, well, if they've already done the testing, there's no need for me to do it. I just assumed that was true. It was for God's sake, it was in a book I paid 10 cents for. It's got to be fact, But anyway, there was a thing in there that was like, if there's a a girl that doesn't know you exist and all this, like you could say this little chant, or you could, I don't remember, it was like if you eat something like a berry for 3 days in a row and you say this every night, and I remember thinking like, man, there's like a 99.9% chance that this doesn't work, but I mean, that's still 0.1% that it might, and I just remember thinking, I mean, this is like 7th or 8th grade, like I was a kid, but I just remember thinking like what if it doesn't work? It's not like I'm not drinking Roald Dahl's sweat, you know what I mean? Like there's no downside, like it's not hurting anybody. It's just like, if it doesn't work, then nobody has to know about it until 40 years later when I tell the internet that I did this.
Yeah, I think that's cute. So how'd it go?
She did not know who I was, and actually it did. That's not true. I will say that 2 words came out of my little ploy. Restraining order. No, it wasn't. It wasn't quite
You're
that
killing
bad.
me. Jeez, don't do that when I'm drinking.
No, it was. I don't think it was one of those situations where like we had. It was like somebody in another class, so she did not know who I was, and then later she still did not know who I was. It did not have any effect at all. And then I began to suspect that maybe that pyramid thing was hokey too. So
here's the thing. I'm not going to mock you for that, because when we were researching this topic, as I looked down this list of things that people thought would work, pyramid power seems downright scientific compared to some of this stuff that I look at. Not just weird beetles that you could smash up to get your woman to like you. So, over the years, everyone sort of had their gimmick. All the different. You mentioned it. Like this is the sort of thing that's been around forever. And I went through and we grabbed some of these to talk about. And so just to get into it a little bit, you may be surprised to learn that the Native Americans, they were looking for love. They're frolicking out, before we came and ruined it, they were frolicking out in the woods, having a good time. So what do you do if you need to attract the hot squaw next door? Well, you may want to drown a lizard and then cut their neck out, grind it up, and use that as some sort of aphrodisiac, which is something that did happen. Along those lines, they've also mentioned here that if you're at a place where you can pull this off, and I've heard this before, maybe you've heard this one, what you do is you go out and you hunt yourself down a rhino. Then you rip off the horn, throw the rest of the rhino in the garbage, and then you grind the rhino horn down. And this is supposed to have aphrodisiac-style properties. You ever heard this with the rhino?
I have heard that before. It seems it seems good for the lovelorn and bad for the rhino.
And very wasteful too. All that rhino there, you're up to that one item, and not to mention you don't just go out and kill a rhino. I mean, you really have to love somebody.
It does seem. It makes you wonder. Like, I mean, all of these had to have some basis. Like, how did it start? You know what I mean? Like, one guy was like, man, that girl in the tent next to us, man, I just wish she would know me. And he's like, you know what you got to do? Have you tried cutting out a lizard neck? And he goes, no. What made you think of that? And then maybe they're just chugging a bag. He's like, I don't know, man. It's just first thing that came to my head. Maybe that was a good idea. I don't know.
Oh, we're going into a little gray area here. But when it comes to like a rhino horn, I have 2 thoughts on that. Number one, if you have the jack, and keep in mind, I'm not talking about like today. I hop in a car, drive to Africa with an elephant gun, go out in the range and shoot a rhino. That right there in itself, that's hard. Not easy, right? Because I'm a schlub. Right. Even if I'm a trained hunter, it's a rhino. They'll kill you, okay?
Yeah.
But step back hundreds of years,
right?
All right? You're desperately lonely or desperately in need of some loving, all right? And your only recourse is to go out and kill a rhino with the weapons you have on hand, grind up its horn, you deliver it to the woman. Like, how sad are you when nothing happens?
Well,
You know?
I would, if I were, if the tables were turned
Yeah.
and a woman was trying to get my attention, right? I would be more impressed if she just gave me the rhino horn.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, where'd you get that? And he goes, I killed a rhino. I went out and I beat him to death with my bare hands and I ripped his horn off. I'd be like, holy crap. And then she looks at you and she goes, guess who's next? And then fast forward and there you are at the altar. You're like, well, how'd you meet your wife? It all started with a rhino horn, you know? I don't know. It's weird.
So, other items that have been used in this same vein would be many, many different sorts of flowers have been used. Particularly in ancient Greece, you've got your orchid, which I've heard about it's funny how these get passed down because I'll read Fate magazine. I don't know if you ever looked through these Fate magazines, but in the back they've got classified ads. I mean, and this is a throwback to like, I don't know, the 50s. These ads. I mean, it's like, you become a minister, like learn hypnotism, become a vampire, any sort of crazy thing you could think of.
I've ordered at least 2 out of those 3. Go ahead.
Well, which one worked?
Well, I don't want to tell you until next week.
It seems like that should have came up on episode 1. The fact that you kept turning yourself into a vampire. But so I'm sure as I'm sitting here, I've seen many ads for potions, love potions, and orchids are prominently displayed in several of them. So I'm assuming that's where that came from. Someone must have picked up a history book, or maybe these witches, they know, about the incredible power of the orchid. I'll buy that. But the next one here, I have a little more trouble getting into as an aphrodisiac. So this one, they say, it derives from the 17th century in colonial New Mexico, settled by the Spanish. You need to turn on your lady. What do? Easy. You get a bunch of herbs, mash them up in a bowl, and then you mash up some worms in there. Get them all wormy. Then you feed that to them. And these bodily fluids that the worms secrete, you put those on the chest of the person you love, Flack. How would that get over? You go up to somebody and rub some oregano with worm guts in it on their chest while they're not looking.
I mean, in a way, I'd rather do that than have them to have to drink it, because if it works, then you're kissing a girl with worms in her teeth.
It's a valid point. You should try that with your wife one night. Go out in your yard, pick some grass up and some more, just grind them up, see how that goes. Let us report back.
Right. She'd be like, why are you touching me? Like, don't worry about it. Why are there... And I mess it all up. I just get like rubber fishing worms. And she's like, what is this?
It's hard to get juice out of those too. I don't know if you knew that.
Hey, I'm telling, by the way, I'm on, while you are going on about worms, I'm on Amazon right now. You can order Spanish fly drops for $49.95.
Wow. Whoa, that's kind of pricey. And then how many you get?
I mean, it is like an eyedropper bottle that says Spanish fly. And then it says, if you're not sold, I just want to tell you what it says at the bottom. As seen on social media.
That's all you need to know.
That's all right there.
Remember when we talked? Remember a few minutes ago we talked about the sweaty remains of Roald Dahl.
I've been trying to forget it.
Guess what? That sort of thing will carry right over into love potions. Or in this case,
oh boy,
this isn't so much a potion as this is a delicious pastry. It's called sweaty cakes, Rob. So throughout history, it says sweaty cakes have been used to woo a lover. Because you get them to eat the cake. Now, what do you think's in a sweaty cake? You want to take a guess?
No, I don't want to know.
Please allow me to elaborate on the sweaty cake. It's a medieval recipe, and you know how they were back in those days. You use whatever you could find. You may not have no eggs or flour, but one thing you darn sure got is sweat, blood, and other bodily fluids. That's all you need to make these sweaty cakes. And by the way, don't be shy. It's okay to put bits of skin and hair in there too. So there you go. We should make some of those up for like Valentine's Day. That'd be lovely.
I want you to imagine this scene where you somehow get this woman that you're attracted to eat that, and then you go, hey, are you feeling anything? And then she goes, no, why? And you're like, because that's full of my hair and blood. Maybe that would win you over.
That's how you do it.
Right. And then right then, no matter what happens after that, you'll know if it worked.
Yeah, I will say one thing. If you feed someone sweaty cakes and they don't run screaming into the night, that's love. You've done it. You found your true love.
Here's the thing. I mean, there's so many things wrong with that, starting with the name. Like we're off to it needs PR work from top to bottom, I would say.
Yeah, that one is a rough one. Now, those are just a few examples of love potions that we pulled off the big web. Does anything else strike your mind on the? Can you think of anything else that you want to throw in on top of these? Because those are pretty good.
Here's what I'm thinking about the sweaty cakes thing, and not that I'm recommending it, right? But
I don't like where this is going.
No, but I'm just thinking, like, I think that probably like some cannibalism, right? Is which is another as the ladies call it a turn on.
What ladies?
Because you're you're trying to consume whatever the essence of that person, not really their literal flesh, right? You're trying to consume that and put that person's essence into you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're going with. Yeah.
So I could see with the concept of the sweaty cake that you're like, if they consume part of you, then it would endure them to you somehow, right? So I mean, logically, I could almost see it, but then I feel like it's also something you could never tell them afterwards. Like if you gave someone Spanish fly and then you're like, I don't know why I feel so attracted to you. You're like, well, there might have been this Spanish fly involved or something, but I don't think you could be like, well, I gave you some of my hair to eat.
Yeah.
I think you got to keep it to yourself. I think sweaty cakes is a secret between you and the cakes.
You don't think if you let your woman in on it that she's not going to brag to her friends? My Jimmy loves me so much he made me a loaf of sweaty cakes last night,
right? And
I ate them. They were so tasty, and now his essence is a part of it. You don't think that would get over with at the supper club?
I mean, here's how it happens. You go. Here's the thing. You need multiple chances at this, right? So you make a dozen little tiny sweaty cakes, and then she gets up for work the next day and is like, "Oh, he made these snacks for my workmates," and then goes. No. And now they're out there, and then everybody's like, "Oh, what? There's a tooth in this one," Like,
how has this not been filmed? What's happened? This is a comedy right here, in my opinion. That's good. So,
Love Potion number 9 gets all the good songs, but I think there's a song here, the sweaty cake.
If you
she's my sweaty cake lady.
To close the door on this, it's something I was pondering.
Please.
Well, yes. Not the sweaty cakes, but the love potions in general. We lived for thousands of years, for millennia, for all of man's time on Earth, and we were incapable of creating a love potion that we know for certain will work. All right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we've created every other sort of thing that could knock a sucker out, incapacitate suckers. None of this stuff equates love. And I'm not sure any of the things that they tried to do earlier would have equated to love either. So this is probably a subject where man should probably cut his losses on the love potions. I just don't see a good ending to any of these.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna counter. Because when I start thinking about like these different aphrodisiacs that you mentioned, even when you go back to the beers and stuff like that, I think at the beginning you start at the top, right? Like you go, I want this lady to be sweet on me. I'm gonna give her some sugar water and see if that works. And you do it, and it doesn't work. So maybe ground up lizard throats and sweaty cakes weren't the first idea.
Right.
Maybe they've tried 10,000 things, right? Like they were like, Jesus, I did the sugar, I did the flour, I gave her cookies, orchid sandwich, and like you work your way down and you're like, what is left? You're like, oh, did you try smearing worms on her? But no, like you just get down. So that's what I would say is maybe it's not that there's not a love potion. It's just that we haven't found it yet.
It makes me wonder if this is the stuff that they kept around. What did they reject? One would wonder, because it's going to be hard pressed to beat some of this stuff. But by God, they must have given it a try at some point in the past. Well, let's get the heck out of love potions. But by God, we've got one more segment left to go, and I think we've saved a doozy for last, because you can't talk about poisons and potions without the combination of the two. And we're going to talk in our next segment. We're going to get into a little bit of old school patent medicines. This is Conversations from the Dark Side. We'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Dark Side.
Summertime fishing with Dad. Running down a new trail. Paddling free in the wild, exploring as a family, experiencing something for the first time, and loving it. Whatever they are, we all have favorite memories. Come make some with your family in Nature's Mountain Playground, Pocahontas County, West Virginia. Call 800-336-7009 for your free 40-page visitor's guide.
It's the world's only Mothman Museum, the premier destination for Mothman fans. The Mothman Museum is the only place where you can see the largest collection of props and memorabilia from the Mothman Prophecies movie, and read rare historical documents from the Scarborough Mountain Mothman eyewitnesses themselves documenting what they experienced that fateful night on November 15th, 1966. The museum is located right next to the Mothman statue on Main Street in Point Pleasant.
You are experiencing Conversations from the Dark Side.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the final segment for Conversations from the Dark Side. Tonight we are looking at potions and poisons. Hey, before we get to this last segment, we're going to be doing the show next week, and part of the show is going to be taking your experiences that you've sent in or called in on the hotline and discussing them, playing them on the air. If you've been watching the video, you've seen a number and an email address flashing at the bottom of the screen. If you're listening on the radio, don't feel like you're left out. We'd love to hear from you, because next week we'll be discussing more of a potpourri of Halloween joy, including ghost stories and anything from Bigfoot sightings to UFOs to ghosts in your room. If you'd like to email us, that email address is thedarkside@email.com. Or you can call our 24/7 automated voicemail at 304-397-0810. We'd love to hear from you. We've had several people send in some experiences that we're going to talk about next week, and we'd love to talk about yours.
Yeah, and that goes right to a voicemail. It doesn't bother anybody when you call that. So you can
correct,
call
Amundo.
24 hours.
It's funny you should mention that, though, Flack, because I'm going to kill this. I'm going to kill the gimmick here. So I had the voicemail accidentally turn to ring through to my phone, and I was at work and got a phone call from one of the listeners. I chatted with him. Luckily, I knew who it was, but it was my bad. But yes, trust me, it will not ring to me. It will ring directly to the voicemail line. But we were both quite surprised when he called me at work. So, potions and poisons. You've got to talk about. I'm sort of the king dog of the amalgamation of potions and poisons, the old patent medicine trade. Now, for people that aren't quite familiar with that term, I looked up the definition of a patent medicine just to get it out there. Patent medicines are commercially available products advertised to consumers, and they're over-the-counter medicines, and they cover a variety of different illnesses and ailments, and they may or may not work they may or may not kill you or hurt you. It's really up in the air. Now, the patent medicine business in the States was a big money maker for quite a while. The 1800s and early 1800s were full of people that were pretty much, because anything goes back in those days, and so there was very little oversight. And so you got a lot of things in medicines that you would not normally think that you would get. For example, cocaine was quite popular, and coca extract was very popular. Stuff like different sorts of flowers would be implemented into the mix. Fruit salt. This one I wasn't familiar with, but it's a compound made up of organic acids, salts, and flavor and sugar. It's supposed to give the horrible tasting stuff some flavor. They would also, here's another one that was quite popular, would be litha water, which is basically lithium. It's very trace salts made from lithium, which, by the way, you should not ingest. Believe it or not, there was a snake oil that was used as an ingredient, and it was so popular in these brews that it became sort of the ipso facto overarching name for the entire mess. And there were all sorts of other odd things, everything from ground up worms and bugs to actual human byproducts, I guess would be the best way to put that, since we've already delved down that road when it comes to patent medicines. Now, have you ever delved into the whole patent medicine thing, Flacker?
Very little. You know, there's a drugstore near it's in Guthrie, Oklahoma, which is not far from me. Guthrie, Oklahoma was the capital of Oklahoma for a very brief period of time, like not very long. And they have a medicine store from the 1800s that they've basically preserved. That's like it's like a museum. You could go in there, and they have all these crazy different medicines. So they have, you know, you look at it, and everybody knows, like, oh, they sold cocaine. You know, that's like everybody knows that one. You know. But you can see a lot of these other different ones, you know, not FDA approved.
No,
most of them. And the thing was, back then, like there were literally so many ways to die, you know, in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like literally, you can be like, "What happened to your kid?" Like, don't know. They went out in the field. We found them dead. You know, something bit them, or they drank something or ate something, or we don't know, right? Like, it would just be a mystery. And so I think that's these types of medicines both preyed on people, right? Because you come into town and be like, oh, you know, my hair's falling out, or, you know, Job is sick or whatever. And they would go, oh, well, here's the thing, you know, drink this. And these people were gone before, you know, you would know, like, drink this for 6 months. Well, in 2 days, they're off to the next town.
Yes.
You know, so you wouldn't be able to, and if something bad happens, you know, I mean, if you gave somebody lithium to drink and say, drink this every day for, you know, a month or whatever, well, by the end of the month, you might be really sick or dead, but this guy would be gone. You know, he's off to the next town. So, there wasn't the accountability that we would have today.
You got that right, Flack. That's I didn't thought about that, but that's a great take. You know, there were plenty of these old brands that, believe it or not, are still around, right? And some of them are quite well known. Just to name a few, and it's funny, a lot of these that stuck around there was a time when like seltzered waters and carbonation first appeared that, like, it was well known at the time to have medicinal effects, like very healing. And so a lot of modern soda derives from this era, from the late 1800s to the mid 1950s. Just over a few of these. 7-Up, and you'll notice, because of their kind of wacky names. 7-Up was a throwback that's still around. Of course, Coca-Cola, which had all sorts of cure-all, phrases under it, and of course, at some point in its illustrious past, did have the leaves of coca leaves in it. Dr. Pepper is another one. Root beers were one of the ones that were known to have medicinal effects, including Hires root beer, which just bought some of that. Pepsi, that's another one, and Moxie was another one. Those are all still around. So there were lots of stuff that made it out that are still around. And there's some other ones that are like lesser known that are, I wouldn't necessarily say they were necessarily good for you, but they're still around. But there were plenty of bad ones, Flack. And so I thought
we go.
I thought just for
bad
fun,
ones.
just for fun, I thought we'd discuss some of these and see what you thought about them. These are in some particular order, and I'll explain the order we get to them. So right out of the gate, there was a liniment called ABC liniment, and of course, the ABC stood for stuff, right? And what did it stand for? Aconite, belladonna, and chloroform. So you would take the ABC liniment, and you may not be surprised to learn that the formula caused numerous poisonings and at least one death. So there you go. Nothing cures that headache like chloroform. That'll do it for you.
The goal was you start saying the ABCs, and if you made it to Z, you were going to live.
Yeah. yeah. So now this one's an interesting one. Buffalo Lithia water. Like I mentioned, Lithia water was quite popular. People thought that lithium had healing properties and was therapeutic. I mean, they weren't wrong necessarily. Sure. Lithium is prescribed. Well, I don't know if it's still prescribed. Is it still prescribed for any sort of disorders? I'm not sure, but I mean, I've known people that were on lithium. But people wanted big doses of lithium, and Buffalo Lithia water
too.
Yeah, who does it, right? But Buffalo Lithia water is not where you'd want to go because they got in trouble because despite the fact that they claimed they had tons of lithium in there, you would have to take a therapeutic dose. You would have to drink 150,000 gallons a day. So, believe it or not, they got called to the carpet. There was a reckoning for some of these, and Buffalo Lithia water, they got to take it down. Yeah. Another one hit. This sounds. Hey, listen. You want to, nowadays you got to give your drug a good name. Like Funator and Glenex or whatever.
Right.
Why not call your drug Chlorodyne? Because it rolls off the tongue. This one had laudanum, tincture of cannabis, and of course you got to throw in some chloroform. And this was marketed as a cure-all, but according to the source, frequently caused addiction to chlorodyne and overdoses of chlorodyne. So yeah,
I like the name. Almost it sounds like a. Why am I thinking of like RoboCop? Like a robot company that'll knock you out.
Yeah, no kidding. Now these next three all have something in common, because you know what irritates you. There's nothing more irritating back in the day than an annoying, screaming little brat, right?
Sure.
So what do? Well, you drug them. Duh. That's the way you do it.
We just covered it, right?
Let's talk about Dalby's Carminative. The opium-based medicine was marketed for calming babies. But the problem was, as doctors found out, it was potentially fatal to the baby. But it did calm them down. Of course, it was opium-based.
What's the problem? They won't stop screaming? That's the solution.
Yeah.
We'll take care of the problem.
Not to be outdone, you've got Godfrey's cordial called Mother's Friend. This was a laudanum, and it was used to quiet infants. The problem is it would give them lethal opioid and opium poisoning so it would calm them to the point where they just didn't move. This was also, they got in trouble for that one. I guess you figured that out. And then rounding out the child abuse list, Miss Winslow's soothing syrup. That sounds pretty good. That's better than chlorodyne.
Right, better name.
This is a morphine syrup that was on the market until 1930, despite the fact that people started seeing babies die as early as 1911. But that didn't stop them. They kept it on the market for 19 more years. But yes, you're giving your child morphine in a spoon.
I'm glad that all these were off the market by the time I was a child, because my mom would 100% would have been like off to the store and be like, no, hey, here's an old, you got a visit from Mrs. Winslow.
Now, this next batch, I like to call the we are living in a dry county type medicine.
Okay.
So you've got Hadacol, marketed as a vitamin supplement in the 40s and 50s. It had tons and tons of alcohol, and people just drank it. So if you can't go and buy booze, you could go buy Hadacol.
I see.
And then if not to be outdone, you could go get yourself a bottle of Jamaica ginger. That even sounds like a brew, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah, I think I've had that. It comes in a little pink glass.
So this was popular during Prohibition and contained 70 to 80% ethanol by weight.
Wow.
That
So
would do
first of
you.
all, yeah, I would order that right now, actually. Sounds pretty good.
Listen, but it didn't have raw doll's butt juice in it. I'm not interested.
I mean, right.
Let's be honest. Speaking of butt juice,
Yeah.
you know,
There's a transition you don't hear every day.
let's talk about Dr. Rush's Billowas Pills. This was laxatives. Now, and this was created by a man named Benjamin Rush, ironically. Now, Dr. Benjamin Rush, I don't want to, he spent time in school. So how do you make a laxative back in those days? Well, step one, get you a jug, pour some water in it, and then here's the key: 50% mercury. 50% mercury just to get you going. Nothing works out the intestine like the mercury.
Right.
So that was Dr. Rush. Now, you've also got Fowler's solution. Listen. This was pitched as a treatment for many things, including leukemia. Okay, this is a wonder drug. So what's in it? Hey, nothing heals up the body better than a compound consisting of arsenic.
Listen, you drink enough of it, you will not die of leukemia.
Valid point.
100% success rate.
Now, you know who was at the forefront of drug manufacturing at the turn of the century was your Swedes, and so they came up with phosphoaragon. All right, so that's pretty cool.
Okay.
This is
It sounds like a guy from a video game.
This is a preparation, they call it. I assume you would eat this, and its main ingredients in it were sugar and milk and calf's brain. That's how you cure it. So
Man, all these they always start good.
yeah,
They always start
See,
good.
that's the way I do it. I like to build it
2
up.
out of 3.
Then you
2
pull
out
the
of 3.
cord and bring it up the rear here. And this is a 16th century, way back. You're gonna love this one. This is Solomon's.
But I won't.
Solomon's water. Okay.
Okay.
This was now get this. Listen, who hasn't done many facial peels in their life, right? I know I have. That's why my
Sure.
skin looks so milky white.
Right.
This was a 16th century facial peel. And what do you put in it back in those days? Well, heck, how about sulfur, mercury, and then the secret key ingredient, turpentine. And just mix it all together. And get this, it was effective as a facial peel. The problem was, if you used it too often, you would, of course, die from mercury poisoning. So there you go.
So instead of that, when I need to exfoliate, what I like to do is scrub real hard with a sweaty cake. And it would just.
The funny thing is, then you
take
can
that-
serve it. That's what you
and then
do. The old
get
scrub
right
and eat.
back to
That's
it.
the way you do it.
You mentioned mercury a couple of times, and this is I guess somewhat related, but I remember there was when I started working at my job, there was a lady who was 50 years older than me. Like, I started my job when I was in my 20s. There was a lady who was in her 70s, and I don't remember if I'd got a cut or I've got something. She's like, you know what you need to put on that is some monkey's blood, and I was like, what? And I didn't know that was a name for something else. But then whenever we looked it up, I was like, yeah, it was like this stuff. It was like a mixture that you put on stuff. But I looked it up and I was like, Yeah, it's full of mercury. Like they don't do that anymore, you know. And but I guess now they have like that they have stuff that has that same name, but it doesn't have quite as much mercury. But it would stain you. Like if you put it on, you know, they would put it on a cut or whatever. It's like an antiseptic, you know, sort of thing. But yeah, it would stain your skin because it had so much mercury and stuff. But I was like, I thought she was like saying like literally monkey's blood. I was like, what are you talking about?
That is, yeah. Well, that's what I would have thought. I would have never,
Yeah.
nobody would have guessed that. You know,
Yeah.
it's funny because here we are, as we record this, it's October of 2024. And we're laughing at all these various wacky cures and whatnot. But we still live in a world where quack medicine and unproven, unsanctioned treatments are, not only are they prevalent, but they've never been easy to get, have they? I mean, if you think about it. And I'm talking everything from workout. I mean, listen, I when I used to go to the gym, and I did go to the gym, believe it or not, folks, at one time, there were all sorts of crazy non-steroidy type pills and drugs that were pushed in the back of these muscle and fitness magazines. And I had friends trying all these mixes and powders. If you go into any gym, they're going to have a big section of all sorts of weight gain and weight loss and muscle build this and protein that. And, I mean, I watched a documentary one time where this guy just went out, took a photo, and made his own protein powder and, like, had it ready to go in, like, a couple days. And there was nothing in it. I mean, you could literally put anything you want in a package because the FDA doesn't review it. So it's easy to do, and I'm sure you can think of more than a few. I mean, we've just heard about a cough medicine a year or so ago that had been out forever, and they ruled that it did nothing, if you'll recall.
Right. Yeah.
I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, well, there's lots of, you know, if you say things like, there's certain words, like if you say, oh, this is a homeopathic thing, right?
Yeah.
Then that doesn't have to go through FDA or whatever. So, you know, and people swear by certain things, you know, I mean, my mom, like, you know, when you're not feeling good and people say you have to have chicken soup, you know, and you go, well, does that really do anything, or do we just think it does? You know, so it's hard to say. You know, I remember there was I'm sure you've heard the same stories, like a Ripley's Believe It or Not kind of thing, where there was a witch doctor, and he had pointed he had a bone, and he like pointed this bone at somebody and said, you will die, you know, in X amount of time or whatever. And the guy died, you know, and it was literally just because the power of the mind, right? Like that person believed in it so much that it ended up happening, you know. And so sometimes for these, you know, placebos or stuff that's not true. I mean, when you, you know, eat a rhino horn or whatever, you know, if you believe that works, then maybe, you know, because our brains are so powerful, that maybe it does work, you know. Maybe not because it's a rhino horn, but maybe because we believe, you know, if you're a person that believes that the rhino horn would do something, then it might.
The placebo effect.
Mm-hmm.
Is what you're saying. You know, it's
Sure.
funny. I was just nosing around.
Yeah, but that's a much shorter way of saying it.
Yeah.
I don't like to say things. I don't say things a short way.
Right out of the gate, I'm looking at the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. They had an article out last year. 1 in 10 newly approved drugs don't work. So these are approved drugs, and this is from the is the Physicians Committee. So, I mean, right there, that tells you something. And you know, in an age where drugs and medicines are big business, you hear about this occasionally, and you wonder about the trial runs and whatnot of these things. Of course, we live in a world that's also more paranoid than it's been for a long time. And so this is what happens when you get a mix of, at least I think this is what happens. This is what happens when you get a mix of things that do work and things that don't work, and people are caught in the middle. And so sometimes they just don't believe any of it. And then there you go. And so you've got a problem. And you can see how it would happen in this day and age. Especially, we talked about the lack of communication in the 1800s. We've got an overabundance of communication now, and so that means any nut job and goof bag can not only tell you things do or don't work, but they can even sell you things that they say do work that don't work. So you better be careful. Stick to the old ways. Go out and get yourself a jug, fill it with mercury and chloroform, and don't do this, please. Please do not poison yourself. I just thought about that because as I'm sitting here, someone at home will be like, "Well, the big fat guy said to drink chloroform, so I'm gonna be in trouble."
You can dilute it by dipping your sweaty cakes in it a little bit, like Oreos in milk, and then eat it that way.
I just noticed that Mr. Chip actually put the poison hotline number up here.
That's probably
not the worst idea, Mr. Chip. 1-800-222-1222. A lot of twos in there. Please don't take poison, and try not to get into the whole love potion business. Try not to make beer out of someone's DNA. Probably just forget about the whole show in retrospect. Now that I think about it. Any parting thoughts on this one, Flack?
No, like I said, the elixirs, the love potions and stuff like that, so far it hasn't worked, but I say let's not give up. Let's keep grinding up animal parts and keep trying. One of these days I think we'll find it, or we'll keep finding new poisons one way or the other. So
I suggest you stick to animals that no one likes, just that way you don't get in trouble. And they're make sure they're not like possum. No, don't do that either. You can't say nothing. Just don't. No. I love everybody. Don't do anything wrong. That's my suggestion.
No.
Hey, let's talk about next week. This will be the ultimate and final episode. Go ahead, Flack.
Well, hey, I just wanted to say that first of all, I know that the Conversations from the Dark Side has always kind of been your baby. I'm so honored and thrilled that you let me join you.
You're a parent now, Flack. Hate to tell you.
No. We love coming up with these topics and stuff. But one thing that makes it really fun for us is when we get stuff from you guys. So if you're listening to the show, you're watching the show, Aaron again mentioned those the numbers and the email address, but you send your submissions in. We'll be going over submissions next week. We kind of like to do a catch-all show towards the end of the season, and next week is the last one of the month. So and then it'll go on the shelf with all of our buckets of sweaty cakes and monkey blood, where it will sit and stew until the following year. So if you have what kind of stuff, what kind of submissions are you looking for?
Hey, listen, if you've seen a UFO, we want to hear from you. If you hung out with a Bigfoot, I want to hear from you. If you saw an alien, I want to hear from you. If you saw a ghost or shadow people or had an out-of-body experience, I mean, we are down to hear from you. If your grandmother had a crazy thing happen to her, or as a child you saw something, or maybe you found a hidden room in your house like Flack did, we want to hear from you, and we would love it if you would take a brief moment and get with us. Again, the number's 304-397-0810. You could call into the toll-free Conversation from the Dark Side hotline, automated hotline. You can text to that message, to that number as well, if you would rather just send it a text. You can also write us an email at thedarkside@mail.com. Any comments or questions, any ideas for show themes, we'd be more than happy to check that out. We've had quite a few over the years. We've had people send in voice mails, and some people even came on the show live and talked about it. So we'd love to hear from you guys to let you be a part of the show. It's amazing to me, Flack, that here we are at the end of the third episode. We've just got one episode to go, and I will say I do look forward to the October every year, just so we get to do this, because I always have such a good time. And I've had a great time this year. I've had a real fun time with it, and I'm glad you've been able to be a part of it with me. It's always a pleasure to work alongside the King Dong of podcasting. And Flack comes up with great ideas. I mean, he really is an idea man. You've done it again, Flack. Put yourself over. Tell people where they can catch your stuff at.
Hey, just go to robohara.com/links. So I made one of those cool link tree things all the kids are doing. So that's got links to my website, my Twitter, my Instagram, and also it has links to my van stuff.
Yeah.
So you can go check out Big Rob's van. By the way, I don't want to give too much away, but for Halloween, for the van, I've got 2 costumes. I got a costume for me and a costume for the van.
I love it.
It'll be interesting. So
I love it. I love it. And I do want to mention, just because our good buddy, my comrade, my partner in crime, John Boatofcar Shawler, joined us early in the first hour. You could catch me and Boat every Friday at 5 p.m. On this network for the Amigos, Everything Amiga podcast, the long-running Amiga podcast dedicated to the Amiga, Commodore Amiga computer. We'd love to have you check that out as well. Check out everything on our channel. We do a lot of fun stuff. We try to stay outside the box. We'll let it go right there. We'll look forward to seeing everybody next week, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for another Conversation of the Dark Side. I will close out by saying that Happy Cody did mention in the chat that we left out one potion, the hair restoring potion. And I will say, I will pay big money. Send me an email. That's all I'm saying. Good night, everybody.
You have just experienced Conversations from the Dark Side. Until next week, try to enjoy the daylight.